So this is now my view pertaining to the subject of our women who need husbands and who cannot find husbands. At the age of 72, 3 years ago, at the age of 72, I took a second wife. Yes. My first wife and I, we now 25 years married. And alhamdulillah, it's been a very happy marriage for 25 years. But 3 years ago, I took a second wife. My first wife, of course, is from Trinidad. But my second wife is Algerian, who lives in France. And we've been married 3 years now. And one of the reasons why I took a second wife was to set the example. To set the example for my students that you should also, if you have the means to be able to maintain another wife, then do please marry. You simply have to inform your wife, inform your family. It's not an obligation, it's a matter of courtesy. Inform them that I'm planning to take another wife. You do not have to seek permission from anyone. Not from the government, not from the imam, not from the society, not from your neighbors, not from your father and mother, not from your wife, not from your family, and not from your children. No. Allah has created you as a man, and Allah has given to you certain rights, and this is one of the rights that you have as a man. So if you have the means to be able to maintain another wife, then you have a duty. I'm saying to you, you have a duty to marry, because unless you marry her, what is going to happen to her? If because she does not have a husband, she is brutalized. She does not have a husband, she is victimized. She does not have a husband, she lives in total fear. She does not have a husband, she is exploited. If she does not have a husband, she succumbs to sin. And you refuse to marry her. No, and you have the means to do so. What will be your fate on Judgment Day? That's right. Allah has created men and given to men a responsibility to maintain and to guard and protect women. Where does He say so? He says so. In Surah An-Nisa, He says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. That men have a responsibility to guard and protect women. Men have a responsibility to maintain women. And if you do not marry her, then what will be her fate? So I'm speaking today from my sitting room, making an appeal to you. If you have the means to take another wife, then do not allow society to stand in the way. Do not allow your relatives and your father and mother and your family members to stand in the way. Do not allow your children to stand in the way. Do not allow your wife to stand in the way. Do not allow the government to stand in the way and the laws of the state to stand in the way. Allah's law is the highest law. And if you are acting in a manner which is pleasing to Allah and others are displeased, you don't care 2 peanuts about them. If you are acting in a manner which is pleasing to Allah and anyone is displeased, you don't care 2 peanuts about them. You go ahead and act in a manner which is pleasing to Allah. Otherwise, there's going to be great fasad on earth. So my appeal to you is go ahead and take another wife if you have the means to do so. I have several women who are writing to me and who need husbands. And of course, you cannot force yourself upon a woman. If you are prepared to marry and she does not like your profile, she has the right to say no. Yes, she has that freedom. So what I'll do is I will ask my assistant, I have an assistant, a sister, a very good Muslim sister who is my assistant. who helps me with my emails. So whenever if you are interested in taking another wife, and you will want to be introduced to one of the sisters who are in touch with me and who would like to get married, I'm not going to run any marriage bureau. I don't have the time for that. But if you write to me, then I'll put you on to my assistant, and then she will then put the two of you together to make contact with each other and see whether it's possible for marriage to take place. But Allah speaks in the Quran on the subject after the battle of Badr, in which several of our men were killed and many children were now orphans and many women are widows. And then the battle of Uhud, which took place 2 years later, about 2 years later. And then a number of our men were killed and many more children are now orphans. And you have orphan girls, you have orphan boys, and you have widows. And all three have to be maintained by the society. And of course, the way in which we maintain them is through the institution of zakat. But what do you do when the budget that you have in zakat is not enough to maintain all these widows and orphan boys and orphan girls? This is a problem. It takes place after wars, particularly after wars. After the First and Second World Wars, Germany in particular suffered badly, with a huge number of young men killed. A huge number of women are now widows and many, many children are orphans. And Germany had no way of solving the problem. So there was rampant prostitution. That's modern Western civilization. They don't have a clue how to deal with the problem. Modern Western civilization. But we in Islam, what's our solution? Allah takes up a subject in Surah to Ali Imran. Is it Ali Imran or is it Surah An-Nisa? Yes, I think perhaps Surah An-Nisa. He says, "Ba'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Wa in khiftum alla tuqsitu fil yatama." Now then, Allah is dealing with a problem in which you have a large number of orphans and widows, and they have to be maintained. And He chooses the one which is most vulnerable of the three. The orphan girl is the most vulnerable, more vulnerable than the orphan boy, and more vulnerable than the widow. So He directs attention to the most vulnerable of all, the orphan girl. And He seeks to provide a solution for this problem. وَإِن خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا قِسْطًا أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. If you fear that you do not have the means to be able to solve this problem, to act justly towards the orphan girls. Why? Because the budget in the zakat fund is not enough. Then He said, this is the way to solve the problem. Remember what is the problem. The problem is not slavery. The problem is orphans. And in the orphans, the problem is the orphan girl more than the orphan boy. And He says, if you fear that you do not have the means to be fair, you cannot act justly to fulfill your collective obligations towards the orphan girls in the society. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. He says the way you solve the problem is to marry them. The orphan girls, marry them. But you can only marry them if they are nisa. You cannot marry a child, not in Islam. Yeah. You have to marry the orphan girl only when she has become Nisa. Then you can